Hi, my name is Janka Salmin and welcome to listen to my presentation about my thesis called The Future of Advertising in the World of Climate Change. I made this presentation because so many people asked for some other format than the almost 90 pages long thesis. So here it comes. I'm not promising that it's going to be very short because there's plenty of things to cover. If you would prefer to listen to this in Finnish instead, it's possible. There's also a similar video presentation. You can find it on if you found this video on social media, it should be linked on the description. If you found this on through some other source, you can go to my LinkedIn profile and just click the link there. There should be a link to Google Drive file that has all kind of materials, including this video and including the Finnish version. So feel free to do so. Many people have asked me why did I want to study something like this, and the reason is actually very selfish. I have for years been very concerned about the state of our climate and our environment, but I was completely excluding myself from it when I was working. So on my personal life, I was trying to do some quite massive changes, like I changed my diet, my consuming habits, my traveling habits, and so on. But on my working life, I just kept going like I always had. Like when I went to the office, I just like left my my values to outside the door and kept going. And at some point, I just realized that that's not the right way to go. And I tried to find some answers how I can do better, like what we as an industry should do better. And I couldn't find anything. And when I talk with other people, I noticed that many people are also dealing with the same issue, and so many people just completely ignored that maybe we should do something because there was no material. So it was easier to be like, hey, it's someone else's issue, someone else's problem, we don't have to do anything. And then I realized that if I want to find some answers, if I want to change something, perhaps I have to be the one who is looking for the answers. So my goal was to find ways to redesign our industry and how to actually do it through everyday work so that you and me and everybody in the industry can do something, not just some words that look fancy on paper, but actually something that we can do, some adaptable and completely doable. And to do that, I had to, of course, understand what went wrong in the past and what is actually still going wrong. And that's why I had to dig a bit deeper, understand like what is the connection between climate change and advertising, and look at climate change from the perspective of advertising. I, of course, couldn't have done this all by myself. And I'm very, very thankful and grateful for my family and my friends and my colleagues who have asked me questions and have questioned stuff and made me think stuff from a different angle. And to be honest, just listen to me going on and on about this for ages. And I also want to give a huge thanks to my colleagues within the industry who were kind enough to take their time and sit down to talk about this with me. I want to thank Arto Sivonen, Hanna Veltheim, Riku Mattila, and Petteri Lilberg for their amazing views and ideas and opinions that they were kind enough to share with me. This work circles very closely around work design, and work design's term is quite weird to most. The main idea is to innovate and redesign work tasks to create more effective jobs that answer to new needs. And this is where people quite often get quite negative attitude towards it because we immediately start to think about technical solutions like robotics, for example, that are taking jobs away from people to make it more effective. But this doesn't have to be the case. Climate and environmental questions are extremely acute in business-related work design at the moment because they are massive, massive issues that we are facing and issues that we have to answer to by designing the industry for better. Varamaki has stated in 2019 that 85% of the jobs of 2030 don't yet exist today. So all these jobs are yet to be designed. And what people often don't get is that we, all of us working in these industries, like in whatever industry, we are part of work design. Work design is not something that we just do by going to sit in a meeting room and trying actively to design work, but actually everything we do, like each single individual is doing within the industry is adding to work design. And now, because we have this very difficult and very dangerous climate situation, we have to start to add that to our work design. Now it's time when we have to actually start to be conscious about work design and sit down and say like, okay, how can I, as an individual, start to design our industry for better, so that we don't actually and accidentally start to design it completely to the wrong direction. That is like super harmful to our environment and our climate. So even if work design is also done without really realizing it, you can do it, you can add to it by doing it consciously. And now it's time when we have to really start to do it. And this is the idea around which this entire work is circling. I don't want to talk too much about climate change. I hope that everybody has educated themselves about climate change and what has led to it and so on. I'm just going to say that it's possibly the biggest threat of humankind, and it's caused by burning fossil fuels to the atmosphere. And the fact is that 97% of climate scientists agree that the current climate change is indeed man-made. At the moment, we are living something called the decade zero. Decade zero means that we are living the last moments when we actually have a chance to change something. And if we don't take that chance and we lose it, after that, climate change will just keep evolving and developing, and we don't have any way to control it anymore. And then we just have to hold on for dear life and hope for the best. People are arguing whether the decade zero actually ended in the end of 2017 or if we are still living it. There are different opinions on that, but I think it's more important to realize that we right now, right at this very second, we are living that moment when we have to make the change. We cannot postpone making the change like by 10 years like we have done in the past. Now it's time to act right now, right at this very moment. We have been sometimes led to believe, perhaps by media, perhaps by companies, or perhaps just by being humans who like to be positive and like to focus on nice things, that everything is going fine. We are going to reach the targets and the goals, and basically that we have made big changes and we can just like keep going like we have done now and everything's gonna be fine. And I'm sad to be the one breaking that bubble, but it's said that not one of the largest and most powerful economies are on a way to reach the 1.5 Celsius goals that has been agreed on Paris Climate Agreement without more radical actions. This was stated by Gibson in 2019, so last year, and this is very, very important. We are not going to do it if we just keep going like this. We have to do more. We have to put more effort, and I hope that if there is something in this presentation that people remember afterwards and that you someday wake up to think about, I hope that it's this one, that there is so much more we have to do to reach the 1.5 Celsius goal. And I want to underline that the 1.5 Celsius goal doesn't mean that no changes in the climate would happen. That's already plus 1.5 Celsius. And we are not on a way to reach it. When we look at the greenhouse gas emissions, during the past 30 years, so during the years that I have been living on this planet, we have seen a 41% increase in the greenhouse gas emissions. A very good way to better understand the emission numbers is to start to split them by country and then split them by each individual living in each country. So we get this emission number for each individual. When we look at these numbers, I've taken different Western countries. First of all, we have Luxembourg. That has been my home for the past years. And Luxembourg's number is 16.86 CO tons per year. When we look at this number, it doesn't say that much to us, but when I tell you that the sustainable number would be 3, we see that there's a huge difference. Similarly, when we look at the annual emissions of each US citizen, the number is not that much behind, it's 16.1, and in Finland, that's my home country, we have number 8.8. In some countries like Malta in Europe, they have less than 4, which is good. Sweden has a little over 4. So we have some countries that are going to the right direction. But then, on the other hand, we have some oil-producing countries like Qatar, for example, that have numbers around like 40 or 50, which is crazy. If we want to reach the Paris Agreement 1.5 Celsius goals, Finland, for example, would have to, by 2050, cut 90% of their individual emissions. Every individual would have to cut their emissions by 90% by 2050. The increased emissions can be easily explained by the rise in consumption, and those two go quite hand in hand. Basically, everything we do in our lives causes some kind of emissions. Purchasing and consuming food or some physical goods, traveling, using internet, when you watch a movie on Netflix or listen to your favorite band on Spotify, that also has emissions. To give some examples, the fashion industry alone is responsible for 8.1% of all global emissions. And similarly, farming animals for food causes 20% of the global emissions. This is not just because we want to consume more, even if we as Western people, especially, we do want to consume more and more, but the business has also their share of this issue. These days, products are often designed to be broken so that they have to be replaced, and we have to keep purchasing. You may have noticed, and I have personally noticed this for a few times, and so have my friends, that you might have a phone that is, let's say, 4 years old already, but it's still working. You could still use it, but unfortunately, the system updates start to get so heavy that first you have to delete your pictures, then you have to delete all the apps until you have no other choice but to take the phone and go to a store and replace it with a new one. Same thing can be noticed in clothing. When we take a look at the clothing from 60s or 70s, even the not so high quality clothing back then is so much better quality than the average clothing that we can these days purchase from different clothing stores. For example, a men's t-shirt has been, in average, made to last around 30 washes before we could go and replace it. The other thing that we like to do in the Western countries is to point fingers at everybody else. We like to point fingers at China and say that China's emissions are huge, which is true. China has very large emissions, but it's important to understand that majority of China's production emissions are caused by the Western countries producing goods for the Western people. So we take our business, we place our factories in China that is still heavily relying on fossil fuel. Then we do mass production to get cheap products to ship them back to Western countries to sell to Western people, while China is taking the responsibility for these emissions, and the international shipping is taking responsibility for the shipping emissions. And we, Western people, are the one taking advantage of those goods. A good way to take a look at the connection between consumption and advertising is to take a look at the good old Maslow's hierarchy of needs. These days, we know that consumers are not as rational as we originally thought. And when we have fulfilled the first needs, so physiological needs and safety needs, when we have food on our table, clean water to drink, houses to live in, and we don't have to be afraid for our lives every single second or every single moment, we move on and we want to fulfill love and belongingness needs, esteem needs, and self-actualization needs. And these are the needs that advertising is targeting. Of course, we have some needs. We need a computer to do our work, to study, or phone to call, clothes, so that we have something to wear. But actually, many products we purchase are not just answering these needs. To answer to the need of having a laptop to work with at work, you could buy a very cheap HP laptop, and I guarantee that it would be enough for most people working in offices. Instead, we have to have a quite expensive MacBook. Similarly, we have to have an iPhone, even if a cheaper version, some cheaper brand, would be just fine. We have to have the clothing that's fashionable today, even if the clothing that were fashionable 10 years ago, they still cover our body and keep us warm. This is because we want to belong into something. We want to be a part of a social group. For example, when you take your MacBook out of your purse and you place it on a table in a meeting room, you are immediately part of something, and you would not be part of that with your HP laptop. When you drive to the yard of your family member and you step out of your Audi, you are part of something. You would not be part of that if you would be driving Skoda, which is, by the way, produced in the same factories using basically the same components, and it also takes you from place A to the place B safely and just as fast. But still, you have to have Audi to be part of something. Advertising people know this. I have personally sat in so many advertising seminars or training sessions where we have been told that remember that you don't have to actually sell the product, you have to sell the need that it's fulfilling. And let me tell you, those needs are not real. They are artificially created needs that advertising people are taught to know how to create, to make us feel like we need those products, those brands especially. A good example to take a look at this is a TED talk I saw some time ago that stated that, perhaps a bit playfully, that there's a super easy way to get all the Audis out of streets almost overnight. We just have to give an Audi to all child molesters in the world, because it's a group, a social group no one wants ever to be associated with. And then we use some communication methods, some advertising methods, and so on, and we communicate that effectively to the entire world that as of this moment, all child molesters drive an Audi. And I can guarantee that no one wants to drive an Audi anymore because you don't want to be associated with that social group. And that's how it works. Of course, it's reversed in that, like, how do you make someone be part of something? Most of us, we don't want to admit that. We like to think that we are just consuming things because we have made the decision. It has started from us and it's for us. But actually, it's a lot of manipulation done by advertising people. And I must say that it's no wonder that the consumption has increased so much. When we look at the numbers of advertising industry, for example, in 1970, an average person saw around 500 adverts a day, when in 2020, the same number is 5,000 adverts a day, which is a crazy number of adverts, a crazy number of artificial needs that have been created and you have been targeted with them. Similarly, you can take a look at the numbers, the money numbers, so to say. 10 years ago, in 2010, the international advertising budget, so all money spent in advertising industry, was 399 billion US dollars. Last year, 2019, the same number was 563 billion, and it has been estimated that in 4 years, in 2024, the number will already be 769.9 billion US dollars. And this shows us how big the industry actually is and how massive it is, how much is going on behind the scenes. Because we as an advertising industry, we are not really like making always a huge number about ourselves. We are not putting in a show and saying that we are here. We are just working behind the scenes on the background, but we are massive. We are so big, and now we have to start to take the responsibility that we have as a massive industry that has such a big impact to people. We can take a look at some other ways advertising and climate change are connected. Climate change has increased the interest towards green advertising, which again has led into the rise of greenwashing. Greenwashing can be said to be superficial, climate or environmentally friendly, which is actually nothing but branding and advertising. Many companies these days have written some aspects of climate and environmental friendliness and sustainability and so on to their values, but quite often that just circles back to branding, because consumers are more picky today and consumers want companies to be sustainable and responsible. So in the end, that's not so much about really caring for the environment, but actually caring that your consumers will not disappear. Greenwashing can be done intentionally or unintentionally. Quite often people just don't realize that they are greenwashing. Maybe they have not educated themselves, or maybe they're just like following some trend, like using trendy words like sustainable or ecological, or they're just using some green colors or some design styles that are trending now. For example, plenty of like plants that is super trendy at the moment. And then we have some more gray area cases. For example, here in the UK, currently you can see an advertising campaign by Ben & Jerry's. They're talking about more sustainably produced energy and asking people to go to sign up some petitions, and at the same time they are still using cow milk in their ice cream, which is adding a lot to climate change. So they have been called out by people for greenwashing. Yes, they are doing something good, but still they are contributing to climate change a lot, when they could actually change to use plant-based milks if they would choose so. Then we have some cases that are completely like very not even gray area greenwashing, but like very intentionally done, because through greenwashing you can even affect governmental decisions if you do it in a right way. You can see this around the world before some important elections or when some important voting is going to take place. And companies such as oil industry, for example, start to suddenly greenwash a lot to make sure that the decision made or the decision makers that are going to be selected are that kind of people who are going to be not making their lives too hard in the future. Advertisers also try to pay either liability or responsibility back by doing pro bono work. This means that in a very extreme case, you could take money from an oil company for 11 months and then pay it back by doing a few pro bono cases for some organizations that are very climate friendly and who don't have budget to do any kind of marketing. And then many advertisers think that this is fine. You have paid back your responsibility and now you don't have anything on your shoulders and you can just keep going. And no matter if it sounds very silly when you put it this way, but this is very often heard, and I have personally heard this so many times. In advertising industry in general, it's still very acceptable to advertise very climate hazard products. It's quite funny when you start to think about it, because many companies for years, maybe for decades, have said that no, we are not going to advertise these products or work with this company because they use fur in their clothing, for example, because we are against fur farming. But still, the same companies are completely fine with taking money from, let's say, a company that is using meat, for example, like a restaurant that is like a beef restaurant, for example, and that's completely acceptable. Laws don't say anything about like climate hazard products, and also there's no social pressure like there is with the fur farming, for example. A good example of this is European Commission, that when you go to look at their website, they should be very conscious about the environment and climate. And still, some time ago, there was a study proving that young Europeans are not consuming that much meat anymore, probably partly because of climate reasons. And the European Commission got very worried about that. And there was a huge marketing budget given to actually boost meat to this target group that didn't seem to consume it enough anymore, meaning the young Europeans. So at the same time, the European Commission knows that meat and meat consumption is not good for the climate. And at the same time, they were still adding to the marketing budget to start to advertise it more. And this can be seen all around in the advertising industry. Advertisers also don't take responsibility over the products they advertise. In this way, like the European Commission, I think it's a good example to use also in this one. We like to point fingers at design teams or our clients if we are working in an agency, and it's always someone else's responsibility, and we just advertise. It's not our fault. Blame someone else. An important part of this is education. Our education in marketing, in advertising, and I have to say that in business in general, but especially in advertising and marketing, it has not evolved or developed to meet the needs of today. It's still taught like it was taught 20 years ago, 25 years ago. We are still just using the same methods, and I have not ever participated in an advertising class, and I have studied a lot of advertising and marketing during the past 15 years or so. Not ever one single class has spoke about sustainability. Is this okay? Can we advertise things like that? Instead, I have been given, and many people that I know that's working in advertising, we have been given tasks like, let's try to find a way to get people buy more flight tickets or consume more meat, or in general just buy more. Here is a fashion company. Your task is to make sure that come up with the advertising campaign so people buy more. And when you raise the question and you say, hey, how about no, I mean, this is not sustainable, the answer is always, but we have to sell more. That's what advertising is doing. And if we still educate people like this, and new professionals are going to graduate from uni, graduate from other schools, or people just go back to school to get more education, and they come back to the industry. And this is their idea of how world still works, when in reality, that is not how world works. Like, we cannot do that anymore. That is not sustainable. And by going on like that, we are just going to end up destroying our planet. And there's not much business to do in destroyed planet. Okay, now that we know a little bit more about the connection between climate change and the advertising industry, we can jump to the guidelines. I have created two sets of guidelines. The first one being guidelines for everyone working in the industry, regardless your position, or whether you're working in an advertising agency or marketing agency, or in some internal in-house marketing communications team. The second set of guidelines is more for business owners and leaders, because they have a little bit different tool set to use to make some changes. But to avoid repeating myself, I have deleted some parts of the second set of guidelines because they are in some parts very similar. So whether you are a business owner or not, just take these first guidelines and then just add some guidelines from this second set. The first thing you have to do is to look in the mirror and admit being a part of this problem. It's important to realize that you are not the only one being the problem, but you are indeed a part of it. All people living in Western countries and so on, we are contributing to the problem. And it's important that we admit that. And after that, we start to make some changes. You don't have to say that it's all your fault, but you have to say that, yes, I'm being part of it. Let's try to fix it. After this, the second thing you must do is to clarify on values and start living by them. Also in working life, no longer we can just abandon our values when we go to the office and then take them back when we leave the office. Now it's important that we remember them and we take the values with us when we go to work, and we also apply them to our working life. We have to be curious and educate ourselves on climate matters. I do understand that this might be stressful or make some people feel anxious or sad, but it's super important that we no longer close our eyes and just like refuse to see what's going on around us. We have to educate ourselves and know what's going on, because without knowing what's going on, we can't really do anything. Also, it's super important, educate yourself what's greenwashing and don't do it. You don't want to be one of the people who do greenwashing, and maybe you don't know that you are doing it unless you educate yourself. We all must also find ways to be part of a change, even if that part is rather small. Riku Mattila gave me actually a very good example of this when I was doing an interview with him. He used Walmart and Unicafe, which is a restaurant of the University of Helsinki, as an example. If we would imagine that Walmart would change to use only sustainable products and they would only sell sustainable products, that impact would be massive. At the same time, Unicafe cannot do something so massive, but what they actually in real life did, they changed their pricing so that buying plant-based meals is cheaper than buying something that has meat. And they also made an impact. So many students are probably now choosing the vegetable or plant-based meals because of the price difference. So the impact is not so big, but they found a way to position themselves. And this is what we also can do as individuals. We have to find the ways we can be part of the change. It's also important to notice that we have very different kind of positions within the industry. For example, we have some people who are working more on a productive type of tasks, jobs. For example, people who are graphic designers who just produce the material as they're being briefed. They have very little to say at the point when something lands on their desks. They basically just have to do it. Who needs to take more responsibility? Other people working on the step before that, namely designers, strategists, planners, many type of creative people who partake in designing campaigns, doing branding, and all kind of planning, because they have the keys to make a change. Those kind of people must make sure that when the briefing lands on the desk of someone who is just doing the production, it's okay, that they are happy to make it, that it doesn't have some climate hazard things. This is the same thing. You have to know how to position yourself. Personally, I belong into this designers, strategists, and planners step, and I understand also that I have to start to take more responsibility. So you have to learn how to position yourself, and you understand what kind of keys to make change you have in your hand. What kind of keys do you hold? It's also important that we dare to speak out about the climate issues and become sort of a messenger of change in our organizations. We quite often stay silent, even if we have some opinions, because perhaps we are afraid that our company doesn't agree with us, that we are going to be in a bad light if we start to talk about these climate things. But now it's a time that we have to start to talk about this. We cannot no longer just be silent and close our eyes. It's very important. Just speak up. Maybe your way to position yourself is that you can actually open your mouth and start to speak about this and not just ignore these. Even if just on the previous slide I was saying that we have to become a messenger of change in our organization, it's also important to understand and accept that if your organization just don't agree with you and you have to go and work against your values, you don't have to stay there. Don't stay in organizations that don't share your values, that don't want to change for better. Just move away, leave, do something else. There are so many organizations that you can work for. Another important aspect here is to understand that the companies that don't want to change needs some pressure. The pressure is partly coming from the clients. So clients want them to be more responsible and they are pushing. But also, if everybody keeps leaving and the people keep leaving, or they keep pushing from the inside and saying that, hey, you need to change, the pressure is coming from two sides. And in the end, the organizations must change. As long as we as consumers, but also as employees, if we just stay silent and accept things as they are, why would the companies need to change if the business owners or the board members don't want to change? We need to put some pressure in things. Also, network with like-minded people. First of all, if your company is reluctant to change, perhaps you can find a new job, or you can find new clients, or other kind of network that you need. But also, people work better in problem solving and other tasks like that when you have some kind of input from other people. And when you find network of people who think like you do or share your opinions and your values, more importantly, you might find that now you have some kind of support group. You don't feel so alone. The weight is not just on your shoulders, but you can actually split the weight with other people and understand that you are not fighting alone with the windmills. So it's very important. Network with like-minded people, because together you can share the weight, but you can also find some new ways to achieve some goals together. Similarly, try to find ways to involve specialists in your projects. We have to stop seeing other professionals within the field as competitors and start to see them more like colleagues from other organizations who can actually help us in things that we perhaps lack. This has everything to do with greenwashing, for example. Sometimes we greenwash because we just don't know for better, perhaps involve some specialist who does know. And also because the industry is changing. We are going to have jobs like facilitators, for example, whose job is just to like bring different kind of resources together. No longer we can just sit in our own corner and take the entire cake and say that we are not going to share with anyone. We have to try to find better ways to do things, and this is one important thing. Let's start to see other people as colleagues, as someone we can learn from, as someone who can help us. It's also important to notice that we should not turn our backs to people who need our help, namely companies who are not doing so well yet, but who are willing to change, who want to change, because they are the ones who need help. So we should try to help them. This doesn't mean that if there is a company who just wants to keep doing stuff like they have done in the past, that you can just justify working with them by saying that we have to help everybody. No, this does not mean that. It means that let's help people to change for better. While finding ways to position yourself, it's also important to find ways to position your company. Especially if you're not working in an advertising agency, but you're working within some in-house advertising or marketing communications team, try to find ways to position your company. Remember the Unicafe and Walmart example. Keep in mind that the advertising industry changes. It's currently changing. So educate yourself and clear values now to make sure that you are a valuable part of the industry also in the future. Don't be the one who is unwilling to change. Do it voluntarily. Help to improve the education. This is super important. Perhaps you can become an alumni in your uni you have graduated from and go to speak to the students. Perhaps you can speak in some training session. Find your way. Can your company do something, for example? This is super important to make sure that the people who are currently studying, either for the first degree or people who have gone back to study some more, that they actually get something that is not outdated like 25 years ago. So try to find ways, and we as an industry also have to find ways how we all can actually try to support and improve the education better. And now we can jump to the guidelines for leaders and business owners. Clarify your own values and morals and work towards them in working life too. And similarly, remember that the company values start with the values of people within the company. This starts with you as business owner or leader. Be curious and educate both yourself but also your personnel on climate matters, and make sure that everybody knows what's going on and everybody shares the same values. Everybody wants to work towards also these climate goals. Design sustainability in the very core of your business. Do not use it as a marketing campaign or method, because that is greenwashing. If this is not part of your company yet, take out the business plans and start to rethink them. How can sustainability be part of the very core of your business? It's important. We cannot have business anymore today without having sustainability as very core value of that business. Similarly, as we spoke about the Walmart and Unicafe, find ways to position your company within the field. Remember both your carbon footprint, but also your carbon handprint. Your carbon footprint is your direct carbon print. Stuff like, do you fly to the other side of the world to meet your clients, even if you could make a Zoom call? Do you recycle, and so on? Carbon handprint, on the other hand, is your indirect print, meaning, for example, what kind of clients you have. What kind of carbon footprint is the footprint of your client? You have to keep both in mind. Be more selective while taking customers, but do not turn your back on clients who want to change and do better, but who are not yet there. Again, the same thing. We have to help the people who want to do better to change, but not justify working with clients who are actually not willing to change. We have to be more consultative and question our clients. If a client says something, we don't have to buy it as it is. We can question. We can also try to educate our clients. It doesn't have to be in an old school way where a client comes and shows us the money and we do whatever they want for us to do. Let's try to change this. Let's try to make it about conversation, about education both ways, and open questions. Money is, of course, crucial for staying in business, and advertising is, and it should be also in the future, a business, not some pro bono thing. We are not going to save this world by pro bono by any means. Marketing and advertising is business. But we have to keep in mind that also sustainability is crucial for staying in business. The successful companies of the future are the ones who jump into sustainability now. Money and sustainability can both fit in the same business plans. You just have to go back to your plans and rethink them. Also, support education. Take people in for purposes of apprenticeship or internships. Make studying while working possible. Help your employees to further educate. Be part of the change of the education. Become an alumni. Host some educational days or training days and so on. Find your way. What is your way to be part of the change? And finally, no matter what your position in the field, just remember to be gracious to yourself, because no one can do everything alone. Don't try to take the weight of everything on your own shoulders, because you're just going to end up having a burnout. Just take your share and keep going and keep playing your part, and that's enough. I thank you all for listening to this. I'm super happy to discuss further about this topic. So just like hit me up with a message on LinkedIn or send me an email if you want to keep talking about this. Feel free to share this video or the other material with your colleagues, with your friends. And I hope that we can spread this sustainability and climate change message on a positive way. I hope that you all got some new ideas or new information, and thank you for listening.